I think for the future, the problem certainly is how can we use it efficiently? How can we use it targeted? Because on that point, we're certainly not very much different than any business or any company which tries to address its customers. We, as a company, want to get our message towards those we want to address. We want to make sure that we address the right ones, and we want to make sure that they take a certain action actually out of what we're doing. To that, it is quite helpful when you somehow try to engage with the people who do the online media. If it's a single blogger, if it's online media in a classical version, like a copy of a sort of newspaper going on there. And that works by giving information, and interesting enough to come back, sometimes their Twitter helps, because bloggers actually who follow you read the news, they make an article out of it, and then suddenly it starts to spin in the media. And that's not always too easy, because what you actually would have to achieve is a transfer, at least from a politician's side of view, is that you will actually have to go really small steps in the end to have a general public awareness of what you actually want to do. So you might start with giving a comment on Twitter. You might add that one to your Facebook page. You have an additional press release maybe on your main website, accompanied by a video explaining the issue. Then you make sure that bloggers, or you hope that bloggers pick it up. When they start reporting about it because they believe it's interesting, you hope that somebody from the actual print media or TV will get up on that one. And the difficulty is then to transfer news from the online environment into sort of the real environment. Because what you want to do is to have a full coverage of all media around. And the online world has made that much, much more difficult. When in earlier days it was quite easy because you just had a press conference, invited the main correspondents, gave them your message, and hopefully it was transported the next day in the news. You can't nowadays just invite all bloggers. Though it would be interesting to try to find out, is it possible to do, for example, an online press conference via some sort of chat program where you could discuss then with the ones in the blogging scene and try to help them or try to make them aware of issues you want to transport. I must admit, I have no real clue where online media is going to go in terms of campaigning, especially for political environment. But what it has already shown is that each action, especially of politicians, is monitored much, much more carefully than before. Reactions to what you do are much more quicker, forcing you also to react much more quicker back if you see that a story is getting a different spin. And what we've also seen and found out, it is much more impossible to give it an actual, or much, much more difficult to give it actually the direction you want it to take. That has been more easier with print media, with TV interviews or on radio interview. The internet, and especially its campaigning environment, is something very, very difficult to keep on track where you actually want to keep it on track, because you also don't know who interacts generally with whom, where are news transported to, how are they interpreted, which story will pick up, which one will spin and be the big news. So for us it means basically to be much, much more on the spot and to analyze continuously what is happening within the internet and what is going on in these social medias. Again, I would not overestimate each of these tools individually. A Facebook fan site is neat. If you don't work on it, if you basically only have your assistants once a day put up a comment or a photo, it won't work. The same is with Twitter or with other things. What you are forced to do once you go down that road is to stay in continuous communication. And that makes it especially difficult for us. If you have quite a full agenda and a full schedule, you might once in a while send something from your BlackBerry up to your Twitter account. But again, it has to be value news, and it has to be regularly, and you have to see if somebody reacts or if somebody follows. So if a political party, a political group, or a member of a parliament, be it national or the European Parliament, would be smart, he actually would employ somebody who is only responsible for online issues, making sure your website is up to date, which you might think is something which is self-evident. Well, have a look at some websites, they're certainly not. And then make sure that there is somebody who highlights to you what's going on your online things. Because at a certain point, it's quite difficult to follow. Imagine if you have a Flickr account, you have MySpace, you have YouTube accounts, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, and then you have also national social platforms you might want to supply. To have that all on site every moment is something which actually, when you're supposed to be in committees, in plenary, or work on legislation, is something you cannot do. So my personal advice would be, make sure you have somebody who is purely responsible for the online environment, for digital media. And at that point, I think I would finish here, because Fleischmann-Hillard, as far as I see, has followed that recommendation early before I gave it at all. And I'm quite eager to hear what you're going to say on that issue. So thank you very much for your attention.